Knit jackets, cozy mittens, home decor, underwear, fashionable capes, and even corsets are all things that you could make on a circular sock machine. While CSM literally stands for a circular sock machine, antique knitting manuals from over 100 years ago are very clear that you can make more things than just cozy coverings for your feet. A lot of the examples that I just showed come from knitting machine manuals from as early as 1873. And while I could literally make myself an entire antique outfit with my CSM, I mean, I could do the undervest, the corset, my petticoat, a jacket, hat, mittens, overshoes. Today I'm going to be following a pattern from the Griswold stocking knitter to make a tam and a muffler. And it's kind of fun that I'm following the Griswold pattern because Griswold is actually the original inventor of the circular knitting machine, as opposed to a flatbed knitting machine that was popular for hundreds of years before. So let's hop right to my auto knitter and get started. This pattern is so interesting. So I have just done the first 20 rows, which is basically done in a mock rib. And now it's telling me basically to hang the hem. Let's go ahead and hang the 20 stitches that we've knit as a hem. Also, this pattern is written for a 84 needle bonnet? No, not bonnet. Cylinder, there we go. I was looking for the word. And I'm using my 60 needle cylinder. It shouldn't be too much of a problem because I'm supposed to increase to 31 stitches using every other needle, which would be 62 stitches in total. But there's also some math thing that's not really working out because you start with 16 stitches and then you increase evenly. So I don't know how you get from an even number to an odd number when you increase by 2 every single time. So I think I'm just going to increase to 30 stitches, which is all the stitches on my cylinder. Now that I'm talking about that, I'm actually kind of worried because this is doing flat knitting on my circular. I think I'm gonna have to take this off. Why? What just went through my head? In order to do flat knitting on a circular sock machines, you can go back and forth. So rather than all the way around, what you see me doing is I'm going left and right. But you need a bit of space past the needles that you're working on for them to disengage before you can turn back around the other way. So when I'm using all the needles on my cylinder, my machine goes, and now we're knitting them around. So I can't knit, or at least from everything that I know, you can't really knit flat when you've engaged the entire cylinder. I do have an 80 stitch cylinder. I guess what we're doing now is taking all this work off and we're going to go ahead and switch to the 80 needle cylinder. Okay, so I am back at the same place we just were, except this time we are on the 80 needle cylinder. So now it's time to hang this hem, which basically just means that I am taking up these live stitches from the bottom and hanging them on the stitches here. So it creates like a folded over edge. And this should be the bottom of the tam. All right, so now the hem is hung, and now we are going to start knitting and shaping the tam. This tam is knit in sections, kind of like pizza pie slices, if you can think of it that way. The way that we're knitting it is going to be in sections from the bottom cast on bit, and then we are increasing out towards the brim, and then from the brim we are decreasing again towards the center, so that it'll be one section is kind of one slice of our tam pizza pie. I don't exactly know how wide one slice slice will be, so I don't know how many I need before I join them together. The pattern also doesn't state it, so I'm gonna go work through that, hopefully with minimal hiccups. But now that I've said it, maybe I jinxed myself, I don't know. I will see what that looks like. The first section is off the CSM. I still have to remove this waste yarn at the bottom. I tried to find the fold over point. I think I found it. So this is kind of what the section looks like straight off the machine. So you can kind of see this is the hung hem, and then it increases to here, and then it decreases a little bit slower down to the tip. At the increase point is where it would fold over. That's where it sits on the head. Does this make any sense at all? Like that. And that would be one section of the tam. I think it's gonna take us quite a few more sections to finish this. But as you can probably see from the light, the sun is basically down for the evening. I have some computer work to do, so I'll probably do that instead, and I will see you again tomorrow as we make some more sections for this tam. Now, while I'm setting up for my third section of the tam, I kind of wanted to have a quick chat about why I like doing this or why I'm doing this. One of the reasons for sure is that I think it's interesting that you have more uses for a CSM than just literally socks. A CSM is an investment. Even if you buy a 3D printed one, it's hundreds of dollars, and I love socks as much as the next person, but I also fully admit that you can get socks in a pack for much cheaper, but I also have a huge collection of sock yarn, so it's a nice way for me to use it up because I'm never going to knit that many socks. Let's just be honest with the sock yarn that I have. However, it's also nice to be able to say that there are more things that you can do with a CSM than just make socks. It makes it feel a little bit more versatile. And then again, I have to admit that all of these suggested things that I can find are from historical manuals. So unless you are specifically looking to make a knitted corset or knitted petticoat, a CSM isn't going to be maybe the most worthwhile to you unless you also enjoy mechanical things like I do. So that's one of the other reasons why I love a CSM, because I love mechanical things. I love historical mechanical things, so it just kind of is that sweet spot for me. One of the other things too about the CSM manuals that I found that I thought was pretty interesting and that we could try out in the future is that it shows a few more ways to make socks than just the heel turn method that I have been doing that I learned with my 3D printed one, which is kind of the, well, it is the modern and the antique way of doing it, because I also found it on antique manuals to make socks with the heel turn. But there's a different manual that I found that has 3 more decidedly different ways of making socks. And that includes making a long tube and cutting into it and sewing it together in different ways to form the heel and the toe. So you are actually able to not have to stop your work and work back and forth. You can just continuously make a long tube, which is really, really quick versus stopping to do a heel and toe turn. However, it does take more finishing. So that is something that I would be interested in doing. And if you want to see me try out 3 more ways to make socks with a CSM, then what we've already done in the past, then let me know, because I would be happy to try them out and compare them to the way that I have been making socks and stockings on my CSM. Okay, so I am pretty well set up now for the third section of the tam, and as a little bit of an update, these are the two sections that are done. I did one last night, one this morning. I kind of clipped them together to see. I accidentally changed the tension on the one this morning a little bit, so it's slightly bigger, but I think with some blocking, I can still use both pieces together, and I'm not going to change the tension or touch the tension at all anymore. I'm going to go ahead and finish this third piece. And then I think I'm going to take a moment to pause and sew the sections together and block them out to see the size, so I have an idea of how much longer it might take me to finish this tam. With 3 of the sections sewn together, you can see that this hat is almost halfway around. So I would say if you're thinking of this as a pizza pie, it looks almost like it spans half the distance. I didn't end up blocking it at this point. I was just holding it up to see exactly what the size would be, and I knew that this would definitely grow and even out in blocking. So at this point I determined that I just needed to make 3 more sections for a total of 6 to make up the entirety of this tam, and then I would be done. I have almost sewn all 6 sections together. The last bit here is just kind of pinned in place because I wasn't sure if I maybe needed a 7th section. I'm a little worried because when you hold it flat, we're getting that little peak in the center because I feel like those decreases aren't exactly right to make it flat. But I think 6 sections will be the right amount, and then with blocking, it should hopefully even out a little bit. And before I do any blocking, I think I'm gonna go to the muffler. as you might have guessed from watching me make this muffler, the pattern is pretty simple. You're just knitting a circular tube of knitting, and when that is as long as you want it to be, or for me I ran out of yarn, you take out every fourth needle and unravel it down to the muffler to make this like open network of fabric, and then do some last finishing steps as I'll discuss next. So I have finally unraveled all of those rows down. It takes longer than you would think. The wool does tend to grab onto itself pretty well, so it resists the unraveling, but you end up with this like deliciously squishy fabric that is just, it's so fun, and it has like a fine web texture. The pattern says to tie up both ends. Well, turn it inside out, then tie up both ends, then add tassels, and then that's your muffler. But I don't know. So you see, this is the side, that's the right side out. I kind of like that versus I turn it inside out. And then this is what that other side looks like. To be honest, it's a really cool effect. It kind of reminds me of that multicolored corn. You know, I think it's called like gemstone corn or something like that. I do want this to be something that I'll wear, which means that I think I'm going to finish it the right side around. I'm going to make the tassel out of the green of the tam, and then the tassel for the tam is going to be out of this, so that it becomes like a matching set. And after all the finishing is complete, I can do a final reveal of my tam and muffler. To say that I am generally incredibly pleased with this set, and I think I'm actually going to get a lot of wear out of it because it gets quite chilly here in the winter time, so this will be a set that I leave in my parents' house. A few things that I struggled with. Always, every single time I make tassels or pom-poms, I underdo it on the size. I always worry it's going to be too big, and then I put it on and it's too small. Not fluffy enough, not bouncy enough, not round enough, not thick enough. So in the future I just have to like double it and then add more. The other thing that you might have been able to tell is this tam is, I think, slightly oversized. The pattern did say to use a loose tension, but I did the loosest tension, and that might have been a tad too loose. It's still wearable. When I readjust it, sometimes it just slips over my face. It was so big that I couldn't find a plate large enough to block it, because especially if you watch Claude's video on one of her stash pressing series, she made two beautiful berets and she blocked them using dinner plates to get them that nice round shape. And every dinner plate that I had was not large enough for this hat, which is why it gives it this kind of like hexagonal shape, and I got these points going on. Not the worst, but I think overall we proved the point that a CSM or a circular sock machine can be used for more than just making cozy socks. And there are a few methods that I still want to try out how to do, so that might be coming in the future. You let me know if you're interested in seeing something like that. Just a quick note at the end here, you might have seen that I enabled YouTube channel memberships. It was something that I was debating whether or not to do, especially because I also have a Patreon and I don't want them to conflict or feel like you're missing out on one if you're subscribed to one and not the other. But I'm going to be honest, YouTube offered me a financial bonus to turn on channel memberships, and as I am trying to make this my full-time job, I found it hard to decline. So they are on now. The membership should line up. I'm making them line up as closely as I can to my Patreon. So if you're already subscribed to my Patreon, you won't be missing out if you're not a YouTube member. If you're a YouTube member, you should hopefully not be missing out from what they say on Patreon. I'll try to make them match as closely as I can. Please don't feel any pressure at all to sign up. Only if you want to, and I honestly truly only turn them on because I get a bonus for just turning them on. Not even anyone signing up, just turning them on. So you might see that notification, but again, no pressure at all. Anyway, that aside, thank you so much for watching and for being here. If you enjoy vintage and historical crafts, especially knitting and sewing and crocheting, then feel free to subscribe and stick around because I have a lot more of these coming up. Some of them will be machine knitting based and a lot of them will be hand knitting based. So I will see you again very soon. Bye.